All right. Welcome to this week's uh, edition of Real Time Career Pivots with myself, Travis, and Nathan. Nathan had to, he had some stuff he had to deal with his kids this afternoon. This afternoon for him, he's in the UK. It's a little after 4 p.m. there. So I'm flying solo today. Depending on comments, questions, maybe a short one, and really just kind of want to give an update on where things are. So Nathan and I are kind of exploring career pivots, and we decided to share in real time as we're going through it. A lot of people share after it's happened, and hindsight's 2020, right? You remove the emotions that you're going through. That people who are going through it, who try to leverage your advice, think that it just went smoothly. It was a perfectly planned, perfectly executed, and then really nothing happens. No matter what plans you have, plans are made to be broken. So we thought, hey, let's just share this in real time with people, with the emotions and everything that goes along contemplating a career shift, a career change, career pivot, whatever you want to call it. So some context for myself. Hey, Joey, welcome from San Jose. I'm on the left coast as well in Spokane, Washington. For myself, I'm running for city council in the city I live in. I've decided, I want to do more after 20 years of a career that really, if I look back on 20 years, what have I really done? What have I accomplished? What impact have I made on others or the world? And the answer was really not much. So, the older I get, now that I have 3 children, it's changed my perspective. And so running for city council was one thing, but I'm also thinking about what happens, if that doesn't happen. If it does happen, what's next? I don't want to do that beyond the 2-year term that I'm running for. I'm just not a politician. That's been made perfectly clear since May, since I threw my hat into the ring to do this. Politics is nasty, just like you would expect, and just not my thing. And I don't like being the center of attention, the center of a campaign. And so after this, I'll gladly help anyone else who wants to run, who shares the same values as I do. But was just thinking, what could I do to make a difference? My undergrad degree is in environmental science. I thought I was going to go down that path. Later, I ended up talking to someone who was in environmental law. Sounded pretty interesting. I thought, well, maybe I should have done that. And then I went and got my MBA. One of my favorite classes was business law. I was surprised at that. And I thought, well, maybe I should have gone the environmental law route, but it's too late now because I'm not going to grad school again after 3 years of an MBA. So fast forward about 15 years or so, maybe more, losing track of time. And I've started to have these thoughts again. It's just that itch of what if, right? And the last thing you want to do is die with what ifs. So I started to explore it. Like, what if I did law school? I'm older, but that doesn't matter. I mean, I could have 20, 25 years left in my career. And like I said, looking back, what have I done the last 20 years? It's made an impact, not much. So if I did something in the next 20 years that made an impact, it would, make up for the last 20. So looked into it a little bit. I went home to Indiana to a class reunion, high school class reunion, and was talking with a friend who's a lawyer, and I didn't know it until the time that she's actually in environmental law. So we were talking and came back and decided, hey, I'm going to take the LSAT. What have I got to lose? $200. What do I have to lose? And then I emailed my friend Angela and said, hey, am I crazy for taking the LSAT at our age and contemplating this career pivot? And she said, absolutely not. Because all you're doing is giving yourself options. And when it was put that way, was like, yeah, that's what I am doing. And I think that's what a lot of us want to do. That's what we kind of strive to do. We want to give ourselves options, options in life, options with our career, options with everything. We don't want to be stuck to one thing. I think a lot of us feel like we are stuck, like, and sunk costs become a problem, right? Mentally, I think humans in general have a tough time with the concept of sunk costs. You put in all this time, 20 years of my career that spans sales, recruitment, marketing. Was it for nothing? Do I look at the recruiting now that I'm in marketing? Do I think that was for nothing? And no, it wasn't. It's career capital. All of those experiences continue to help me now in what I'm doing. Even if it's different, there's some things that I can take. So I try not to look at anything as a sunk cost, because a sunk cost is like shackles. It will weigh you down and prevent you from taking that next step. And so I'm scheduled to take the LSAT in January. And then last week, and I've been doing some research on schools because I haven't done that kind of research in a long time, 20 years. And just looking at things and thinking, like, how much has the world changed? Are there more online options than there used to be? Because when I went through my MBA, it was kind of a hybrid of in person and online, and it was great. It worked out great because I had a full-time job, just like now. And as I started to look at programs, and I'm in the inland Northwest, which is the Spokane, Washington area, which is Spokane, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, Missoula, Montana. It's only 2.5 hours away from where I live. And I used to live in Seattle. A lot more options in Seattle when you got University of Washington, Seattle University, and some other places. Just more options locally. So when I did some research, University of Montana is my top choice because it's got a really good environmental law program, but 2.5 hours away. Then I've got Washington State University, which is down in Pullman, hour and a half away. It's a little closer. And then I've got Gonzaga, which is right here in Spokane, 20 minutes away. So, those three. And I did find that Seattle University has an online element. So I guess those four. And so I thought, maybe I'm just not looking at it right. Maybe there is an online component. It's just not advertised. And with working, I own my own business, a consulting business in demand and operations and marketing. I thought maybe I'm just not seeing it. And so last week, I actually met with someone from Gonzaga. We met at Starbucks. He's in the admissions department. We just had a conversation, and I just asked him, like, I didn't see anything about online. Seattle U is the only one I saw that has any kind of online program. The rest and that was the only one that actually looked like a legit school that had an online program. He's like, yeah, it is about the only legit school that has one. And the Gonzaga law program is in person, and so are most of the others that you would look at. So I'm like, well, rules out Missoula and University of Montana, 2.5 hours away, and I don't want to move. Rules out Pullman, really, an hour and a half away. That's a nasty commute. I go to Wazoo football games, almost every home game, and it's not a fun commute. And so Gonzaga, really, and Seattle U are my only two options. And so I'm trying to give myself options, and my options are dwindling. It's kind of ironic. And so when I was talking with him, I'm like, what kind of time commitment is needed? Are there night classes and evenings and late afternoons maybe? Because that's how my MBA was when I went to the University of Colorado in Denver. And he said, no, it's like a full-time job. In fact, we recommend that everyone quit their job for the 2 to 3 years that it takes to get through law school. And he said, we've seen people who've tried to do both, and it's ended poorly for them. And I was just like, oh shit, that's not what I was expecting to hear. And so I think that's the thing about exploring paths, is just doing research instead of making a quick decision off of emotion and like, oh man, my job sucks, it's time to make a change. You finally get to your breaking point. before you get to that breaking point, start to do research, start to look into it, talk to people who do it, get a feel for what's the day to day. About a month ago, I talked to someone who had started out in environmental law. They're here locally in Liberty Lake, and now they own a development company. But that legal degree gave him the insight to know and how to navigate things as he's building properties, developing those. And so it was good to talk to him. And in talking to him, I'm used to running my own business, being the solo person, or at least leading the team. And he said that kind of environment would be highly unlikely. He said you pretty much have to work for a firm. Larger firms are the ones who do environmental law. And I was just like, working for a larger company doesn't sound appealing. And so taking into account all of these things, I'm still, January is a ways away to take the LSAT. I'm still going to do it, even though it's trending that this probably isn't the best move for me right now, just because I've got a family, a mortgage. I need to work. I don't want to take out loans, or at least, a lot beyond tuition outside of a scholarship or any kind of school funding. And so it's all factoring into my decision making. But right now, if I take the LSAT and do poorly, the decision's made. It's not going to happen regardless. But I take it, see what happens. And if I do well, then I've got options. They're not great options, but then I'll go back and start to do, make a decision, a document where I'll kind of write things down and start to pro con things and really look at all of the alternatives, not just this or that. There's usually more than two options to everything. So I'll explore all of them. What does this mean? How could it work? What if? I like to just do what ifs. Like, hypothetically, let's say I went to law school, had to quit working. What if? How would I make that work? And so it's kind of the path I'm on right now. I enjoy doing marketing, and I have no problem sticking with that, but I may have to change kind of the type of marketing, the type of clients I work with to better align with my interests. And so that's another thing. That's an alternative, right? When you're going through the decision-making process, there's the status quo. There's doing nothing, like just being a bum and doing nothing. And then another thing is, okay, what if I do stick with the status quo? How can I design it in a way that kind of fits those desires, those needs I feel, those wants, to make a difference? What would that look like? How could I change what I'm doing now in some way, do the same thing, but different? So I think that's really what I'm trying to say after 13 minutes of rambling. And I missed Nathan. I wish you were here so I didn't have to talk the whole time. But it's really explore your options and think about all of the options that could exist, not just the two obvious ones that are in front of you, and start to picture yourself and map out for each one, like, what if? And we always start to go toward the worst case scenario. Oh, I quit my job. I go full time. We're broke. My wife can't get a job. She's still trying to find a job after she got laid off one day after coming back from maternity leave. It's a whole nother issue. And gosh, 9 months, 6 months later, still hasn't been able to land something. So again, another factor, decision factor. I am the one bringing in all the income right now, and that's a heavy burden. And so just understand your options and understand how you can maybe make a pivot without making a pivot, pivoting in what you're doing now in a different direction. And that's what a pivot is, right? A career change could be totally different than a pivot, because the pivot, to me, if you've played basketball and you make a pivot, it means you've picked up your dribble and you can't move your feet. So one foot has to stay stationary where it is, but you can move around and pivot. So with that one foot stuck where it is, you're making stuff happen on the peripheral. And that's a career pivot to me is something that's more adjacent instead of a complete change. And so when I look at this, how could I pivot instead of change? And I think that's another option to think about. Is it a complete change or is it a pivot? Is it adjacent to what you're doing now? Um, any questions, any comments? Would love to open it up, and always feel free to interrupt me during these things. Nathan and I, when he's here, we love questions, and then we don't have to just ramble. So love feedback, love your thoughts. If you've gone through anything similar, if a decision seems scary and you thought about all of the worst case scenarios, which is where we tend to go with our rational thinking when we're trying to make decisions or going through life. I think we have to take that into account, but the worst case hardly ever happens. So I think about, well, if the worst case doesn't happen, if a negative case happens, what would that look like? How could I overcome that? Would it be just a bump in the road, a big bump in the road? What would that be, and how would I deal with it? And then also think about the upside. Like, what if I did this and it worked? What if I did this and I was successful? What if I did this and it changed my life, changed my kids' lives? What if I did this and loved it and ended up making more money than I could ever imagine by not even focusing on money? So a lot of different ways to look at things and a lot of different angles and corners to dive into when you're considering these things. So that's kind of where I'm at with my pivot. Still going to do the LSAT, still going to see what I could do. I don't want to give up my marketing. Love it. And I think right now that where I'm at, I had an interview with a company that I've admired for a while. It was at the top of my list. Of if I did make a move, that's where I would want to go. Had an interview, didn't go well. I mean, it went well, but there were some technical gaps. Basically, I'm a HubSpot person, and this was more Salesforce. And I mean, that was it. So that also kind of changed my decision tree too, right? So now I'm all into this business. I now have to figure out, how do I grow it? How do I take the burden off myself? How do I do things? Maybe start a nonprofit if I don't win this election. And how can I do that and run my business? And the simple math is I'm going to have to get to a point to hire somebody pretty quickly to do the tactical execution stuff. And I focus on the strategy and keep building it. And so that's kind of where I'm at now. It's like, okay, the company I really, really wanted to work for didn't work out. Probably won't be unless they go more deeper in HubSpot, because I don't want to pivot and learn Salesforce at this point, when I feel HubSpot is actually gaining on them and has all the momentum and people love it. And it fits with my market, my ideal customer profile of smaller, medium-sized companies, not enterprise, not large, nothing over 200 people. Anyway, that also has kind of removed options. And so now it is all in on this. Let's do the LSAT. Let's see if it works out. Let's put it together, work through some decision-making processes, and see what happens. And I think that's just life. You try to create options, and at the same time, options that you had on the table that you thought were options maybe weren't, no matter what. Or maybe different factors, variables start to happen, and your options start to shrink, and then you try to open them back up. And I think that's just life, the expand and contract of life, of options, of forks in the road, of paths, of decision making. We're always going to come to decisions. We're always going to have multiple paths, and every one will offer a different outcome, and most will be good. And you can't beat yourself up over, and this is what I'm trying to coach myself on. Can't beat yourself up on the path you took. And for me, that was moving away from environmental work, moving into more the private sector, more into business. I made that choice. And I've been happy with it. And so yeah, don't beat yourself up over past decisions. There's nothing you can do now to change that. Think about all of your options that are available, not just the two obvious ones, and do what you can to give yourself more options. And don't get stuck on sunk costs. I think that is, in a nutshell, what I have for you. So with that, 20 minutes. Hopefully this was helpful. If other people are contemplating a career change, a career pivot, to kind of see me as I'm going through it and seeing, hey, what I thought was going to happen isn't what I thought how it was going to happen, right? I thought I could just do this, take classes at night, work around my schedule, keep my marketing business. Maybe even if I went into law, keep my marketing business and hand it off to someone else to manage. And it's an investment at that point. So yeah, I think, that's the beauty of real time. You get to see as I go through it and the research that I'm doing, the questions I'm answering, the way the opportunities are and the options are expanding and contracting as I go through it. So hopefully that was helpful. Connect with me on LinkedIn if we're not connected. Message me here if you have any questions, if you want to just chat. Always open to a conversation if you'd like some advice. Happy to help. So thanks for joining. Appreciate it. Have a great rest of your Wednesday.